Hello everyone, this is the Gadget Man with Discovering in Color, and welcome to this week's video. Today I'm in my favorite place, the gear room, where I keep all of my gear and gadgets and all that kind of stuff. And what I want to talk to you about today is winterizing your gear. Hey, it's fall time, so now's the time to put that summer gear away and start breaking out some of that winter gear. But let's talk about some of the things that I like to do this time of the year. The camping season is starting to wind down some, so the weekends are going to get cooler and wetter, and you don't necessarily want to go out and do that. Some of us do want to be adventurous. Me, I like going out in the cold, but I don't like doing backpacking in the cold. I'll do more car camping in the cold. So what I like to do is go over a lot of my gear that is going to be put away that I use in the summertime, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do to take care of my gear. All right, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at how do I store some of the gear, not necessarily winter or summer gear, but first I want to talk about how I keep my insulation items, such as sleeping bags and down comforters and those type of things. A lot of folks will keep them in the stuff sacks like this here. This is my Get Out Gear blanket. I don't like to leave my packable gear, puffy gear inside of tight compressed items like this for a long period of time. What I like to do is I like to keep them in either one of these mesh bags right here. So I'll just take this out and put it into a mesh bag. And in some of the gear, I actually keep in these nice little bags right here. So they're not compressed, but they are stored nice and neat. The next thing I like to look at is my water sources bag, or how I'm going to drink water. Now, a lot of us use these different types of water filters. This is actually a bee-free water filter. And one thing you want to make sure that if you're going to store this away for a long time is that you want to make sure that your bag here on the inside is dry, because the one thing you don't want is you don't want mold and that type of stuff filling in there. What I do whenever I come back from a camping trip or a backpacking trip, I always like to clean up my bags, sanitize my bags with bleach or something like that, and I let them fully air dry so there is no moisture on the inside. So that way when you're storing it, you don't have to worry about any kind of mold or any of that kind of stuff building up. I do the same for my drinking containers. A lot of people use throwaway containers. I'm trying to be a little more environmentally conscious these days, so I'm switching a lot to these refillable, reusable containers. And what I do the same thing here. After I use them for a trip, take them, clean them out, dry them out, and then they're good to go for the next trip. Another thing you want to do, I don't use these very often, but hydration bladders. These ones here can do the same thing. I like to clean these out, sanitize them out, and then open them up. And you can use almost anything. I've seen people use pieces of wood or pieces of plastic to kind of keep these things open so that they completely and totally dry out. And I usually let them sit there for maybe a week or so before I put them back into storage. And I like to be very meticulous with my gear, because even though I like to buy gear and get gear, I don't want gear to go bad. So usually, as soon as I get back from a trip, that same day, I will take all of my gear, lay it out, clean it out, and get it going. Because I found if I wait more than a day or two, then, it's going to be a little while before I get to it. All right, next thing I want to look at is, these are kind of some of the different things that I use on the road. This is hand sanitizer and bug spray and all that. I like to go through and I like to get these things refilled, because it's nothing worse than you get ready to go on a camp out and you go there and your bottle is half empty or 1/3 full, those type of things, and you got to go and get the thing filled up. So what I normally do is, especially when you get down about this far, this is maybe a quarter of the bottle, I'll go down and I'll fill these back up. And it's only Germ-X hand sanitizer, so you can really use any type of one you want. The clear one, this is the aloe one, it doesn't really matter. Things like bug spray. This is sunscreen. What you want to do on these is, the trick I found on these is that you want to take a look at the expiration date on these, because these things actually do expire. I found one a couple of months ago that had an expiration date of 2009 on it, and I hadn't thrown it away yet. So that's probably a little too far. Use your own judgment of how long you want to use these, but they do have an expiration date on them, and that's when you're supposed to not use them anymore. I also have things like, these little Mio juices here. I like to go through those and make sure that they are still good, that there's still some in here. They haven't leaked all over the place, which is why I keep it in these little Ziploc bags right here, because I have found that these things will leak, especially if you're at a lower altitude and you're driving up to a trailhead at a higher altitude. Sometimes the pressure in these will make these expand and can easily make these leak. And next thing you know, you got all your food packed away, you get to your first night of camp out, you open it up, and you got this sticky meal stuff all over the place. And there's a lot of problems between your gear being bad and attracting animals that you just don't want to have. Another thing when I'm looking at gear, and this is one that a lot of people don't do. These are my stakes, and I've got a couple different sets of stakes, but I liked about this time of year go through and just kind of clean these up. Like these have a lot of old dirt and stuff on them like that, and that's just a meism. I just like to kind of, at least once a year or twice a year, just kind of clean them up and keep them nice and neat looking, because these things here, I keep it in the stake bag, and after a while, all this dirt will just kind of come off and get in the stake bag, and then you go to take them out and the dirt pours all over you. So, but that's just a meism. I like to clean up my stakes. I like to go through my eating utensils, and usually after each trip, I'll put them in the dishwasher or I'll wash them in the sink, those type of things to make sure they're very clean. But this is just, I like to go through and inspect these. My gear here, this is my little cook kit I've got right here. I do keep some things in here sometimes, like this has a little thing of coffee in here. So, I want to check that. Is the expiration date on that still good? Sweetener, those type of things. I want to check this to make sure it's, it's still clean. This is my little backpacking stove. This is actually an MSR pocket rocket. So it's a good idea, just kind of take it out and just kind of take a look at it. Make sure there's nothing bent or anything like that on there. Everything's looking good, those type of things. Because you don't want to find this out when you get out there. Because a stove is something that I don't really check to see if it's working each time. I just assume that every time I go out, it worked last time, so it should work this time. But you never know. I keep it in here, and it gets, this thing gets banged around all the time, and the last thing you want is for, one of those, just basically something happened to it, it doesn't work anymore. Another thing I like to do is, I always take a knife with me, usually when I go. Now's a great time of year to sharpen these things up. I usually just take them out and use them, and I get out there and I find out, yeah, this one's kind of dull. And I say to myself, I got to sharpen this up when I get back. Sometimes I do, usually I don't. But once again, when you're inspecting your gear, just go ahead and check it out, make sure see how sharp it might be, and take a sharpener and take time to sharpen it up. Okay, let me get to some of these electronics here. All these things run on batteries. Last thing you want to find out is that, yeah, it worked last camp out, but now you go to take it on this camp out and it doesn't work anymore. So this is a great time for me to go through and, check it. It's pretty bright there, make sure everything's working right. A lot of times these batteries are really good, especially on some of these LED ones. And then sometimes they just seem to just turn off unexpectedly. So at least once a year, especially in the Streamlight here, I like to just change out the batteries, because I don't want to get out there. And once again, you're on the second night out, there's no moon out, and you go to turn it on, and 20 minutes later, it just turns off because the batteries are dead. Also in the wintertime, if I'm not going to use it for a while, I take the batteries out. I also do it for my summertime stuff. This is a fan. It takes a couple of batteries right here. So what I'll do is, I know I'm not going to be using this until next spring or summer. So these batteries need to come out. I don't want to leave them in there all winter long, because they could go bad. And they could corrode, those type of things. And once you get all that, and you've seen it before, that white, nasty stuff that gets in there, it's just a pain in the butt to clean out. So the batteries will come out of this in the winter time. And then, of course, I've got some of my regular gear that I use. This is my little portable urinal. I just like to take this and inspect it. This one here I will test usually before I go on the road every single time, because it's a portable urinal, and all this is in here is just a Nalgene bottle. It's a wide mouth Nalgene, and it's just inside of this little thing right here to make it a little more appealing, because that's just something you don't want to see when you wake up in the morning. But when I keep it in this bag right here, it does a good job of just making it a little more appealing when you're using it. But I do test this every time I go, because this is one thing that you do not want to leak on you when you are out there. You just don't want it to happen. I won't tell a story. All right, and now we have food. So we definitely want to talk about that. A lot of these meals have expiration dates on them, believe it or not. They're supposed to last, if you think about it, they're going to last a very long time. But a lot of these meals, and it's on here somewhere, there's an expiration date on here. There it is. Best by August of 2024. So what does that mean? That means that they tell you should eat this before August of 2024. Sometimes I buy these on a trip and I don't use them, or I find I've got an old one that I want to take and it just gets put back into storage. So I like to go through these meals here and these snacks. This here is beef jerky, good till August of 2023. So it's got another less than a year left on it. I like to go through this and make sure that these are still good, because they tend to get kind of thrown back in a corner, and I go back there and grab one out, or I have a trip that's not as long as I thought and I bought extra, those type of things. Or we come back early and things I just didn't use. So I like to go through and check these meals to make sure that they're still good, because I don't want to take an expired meal. Will it hurt you? I don't know, but that's the kind of thing I don't necessarily want to find out. So I always like to use meals that are dated the proper way. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I want to talk about storage. Where do you store your gear in the wintertime? And where do you store your gear in the summertime? All right, that's very important. Now, one thing I never do in the summertime is I don't store my gear in an attic space, because attics get extremely hot, and all that does will degrade your gear over time. I had a very nice tent that I kept up in the attic, and I didn't use it for a couple of years. And then one time I'm like, oh, hey, time to use this big family tent. I took it out and it basically dry rotted. So I had used it 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden I had no more tent. So I learned quickly in the summertime, don't leave your stuff that you want to keep well in the attic. Now, I will leave things like Dutch ovens, those type of things up there, because they can take that. It's not a problem. But things that are cloth, nylon, those type of things, I don't keep those in my attic space, which is actually right next to me here. I keep those in the gear room. I think it's a great place to keep it. The same can go in the wintertime. I don't like my stuff, especially things like food items or whatnot. I will not keep those up in the attic because it gets below freezing and they will freeze. So things like beef jerky and those type of things, or any other type of food, I don't necessarily want to freeze them. They're already dry. And even the manufacturers will tell you to keep this at a particular temperature. These peak meals right here, it'll tell you somewhere on here where to keep them. Probably says it here somewhere. I'll look it up. But it'll tell you pretty much you want to keep these at a certain temperature range. Not too hot, not too cold. That's probably the best way to do it. So my stuff stays up here in the gear room. It's a room above the garage space, and it's temperature regulated, so things stay well. And that's great for your gear, such as your blankets right here, your down gear, your synthetic gear, your backpacks, those type of things, tents. I don't like to keep those stored in places that have extreme temperature changes. So I will keep those someplace where it's really nice. So those are some tips that you can use right there to take care of your gear. Things that I use, I like my gear. I like my gear to last a long time. And the way to make that happen is to take care of it. One of the things that you should do, one of the things that I do that I always recommend you do, is when you come back from a trip, take care of your gear that same day. You come back, you're tired, you're dirty, those type of things. Hey, go take a shower, go get a meal. But I always recommend that you take care of your gear the day you get back, because inevitably I found that if I wait till the next day, something comes up, something I've got to do, and next thing you know, it's 2, 3, 4, a week later. And if there's anything in here that might be moist or damp, well, you've given it that much time for mold and mildew and those type of things to build up in it. And I have seen people with tents, I've kept them wrapped up for 2 or 3 weeks, and they go to use them and they smell horrible. So that's it, the Gadget Man with Discovering in Color. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the trail.